my paper is about, so the topic is about Huawei or Huawei. This is a big, giant Chinese multinational company. And why are we talking about it is because we all know that in terms of the trade war, because of the bipolar world right now, what happened up to 1990s or post 1991, post the Soviet downfall, essentially is that actually the global scenario became more unipolar. So from the unipolar to become again bipolar with a huge growth of China, the brand of China that actually went out globally is essentially Huawei. I'm saying Huawei, the Chinese pronunciation could be Huawei. So Huawei is essentially the brand image of China outside. So essentially what happens when primarily there is a trade war between China and the US and also the US allies, you will find through my presentation that Huawei is the one which is extremely affected by it. So we will actually talk about that, and we will see the exorbitant growth of Huawei and then what happened next and so on and so forth. So without further ado, I'm just moving on and kind of talking about it. The first one is room to grow financial figures. I'll give you the financial figures of Huawei, and essentially you will see that the growth is the growth that happened for Huawei in the last 10 years from 2009 up to 2019. And what happened in 2019, we will see that in a bit, is exorbitant. Like if you think about here 2009, the growth was 146.61 was the billion of yuan. Yuan is the Chinese currency. So the billion yuan was 146.61, which if you see and track the growth here, the growth became, it became 891 million won by 2019 or by 2020. So essentially you will find that the growth was like an 8 times growth that happened in that decade. However, guys, there is that cautionary tale that you will see that I'm repeating all through is if you see the growth, it's increasing, but it's increasing at a decreasing rate. So if I go from 2019 to 2020, it's going up, but not by that same percentage of growth that happened before. So there is certain cautionary tales that's going on with Huawei. It's already evident if I just look into the financial figures. If I look into the business segments of Huawei, there are 3 business segments. There are 3 things globally Huawei operates with. One, there is Huawei smartphones, which is the consumer business. Second, the telecom equipments, the routers, the modems that we use so that we can talk via Zoom today. It's more importantly, maybe it's coming out of Huawei. Okay, so in terms of the router or other telecom equipments, Huawei is the undisputed leader about it. And then there is a cloud business of Huawei, which is again competing with Amazon Cloud and so on and so forth. These are the 3 segments. Out of these 3 segments, guys, if you look into 2019 or 2020, you will find that the consumer business, that is smartphones, Huawei smartphones are globally there other than the US. We in the US don't necessarily recognize Huawei smartphones and like it much. But other than that, if you go to Europe, it's very much there. So Huawei smartphones, which is my gray area, and the blue area is all the telecom equipments. So these are the 2 big segments of Huawei. But guys, if you pay attention to what I'm talking right now, you will find that the growth was there, that the gray area and the blue area, or the gray rectangle and the blue rectangle, they were growing up to 2019. But the growth somehow seems to be stalled by 2020. I don't necessarily have 2021's data right now, of course, but by 2020, I can see that there are certain warning signs already. So if I look into the revenue of Huawei, I'll find that Huawei, of course, it's predominantly the Chinese market is captured. But other than that, you will find that Europe, Middle East and Africa, I should say, all these 3, the Eurasia region is also something which is growing in terms of Huawei's presence. And that has to do with China's presence, again, in Europe and in Africa. I know that in my session, the papers are there, which will talk about African infrastructure and Chinese finance and so on and so forth. And you will see what I'm talking about at that point in time. In fact, we have just edited a book, The Belt and Road, which Dr. Datta, I, and Dr. Bellamy edited, and that's out there as well. And if you are interested, there is a fantastic Africa chapter there as well in terms of the infrastructural development or the cautionary tale. I'm deviating a little bit, but let me come back once again. So other than China, East, Europe, Middle East, and Africa are the ones where the growth, the geographic region, the growth is huge for Huawei. However, right now, the things that's happening with Huawei is because of the global supply chain constraints and also because of the US imposed kind of trade things, sanctions. You will find because of the US imposed sanctions, you will find that semiconductor, which is very important an ingredient for Huawei in terms of developing their smartphones, in terms of the telecom equipments, semiconductor shortages are there for Huawei, and that's happening because of the US imposed sanctions to Huawei. So that's because of that, you will find that the semiconductor expenditure by Huawei is going down to some extent. It went up almost consistently in the last decade or so, but then it went down. But that's because of the US imposed sanctions. Now, if I go to telecom network, because I was mentioning to you that that's where it's the brand leader whatsoever. The old timers, if here among the audience, you will remember that if I go back in 2008, you will find that Nokia, Ericsson, those were the telecom providers. But right now, if I look into 2021, just look at the difference between Huawei and the second most, which is Cisco. Huawei spends around, or the brand value is $55 billion, and the second one is Cisco, which is $20 billion. So Huawei is 2.5 times bigger in terms of its brand value than Cisco. And Nokia, Ericsson, and others are just among the distant third, fourth, and so on and so forth. So that there is no doubt whatsoever that Huawei is definitely the brand leader in terms of in terms of the telecom provider. However, why am I saying that there is a cautionary note? I gave you this graph over here, guys. It's definitely the revenue was increasing, but if you see that there is a sharp decline right now, there is a sharp decline that's happening with Huawei. Huawei is the undisputed leader of telecom provider, but there is a decrease in the telecom equipment sales revenue, which is almost a 14% decrease from 2020 June, if I compare that up to 2021 June. So between the second quarter of 2020 and the second quarter of 2021, there is a 14% decrease. However, with the 5G rollout that's going up right now, and that's happening right now, Huawei is expecting that to increase a little bit more. So hopefully that will help them. Whether it will do that or not, that actually remains to be seen. But I will go to the smartphones and I'll talk about in the smartphones what's happening. So in terms of smartphones, again, Huawei is the black rectangle over here, guys. And if you look at that, it was only 4% back in 2012, only 4% back in 2012. And look at 2019, in terms of the smartphone market capture, it's 17.6%. So the fact once again is that Huawei started to capturing the smartphone market hugely, but from 2019 to 2020, again, we can see that cautionary tale happening once again, that the smartphone market share is going down to some extent. So that's happening in the smartphone sector as well. Again, if I deviate a little bit from the graphs and try to think about the bigger picture out here, guys, you will see that the CFO of Huawei was actually detained here in Canada back in 2019. So right after the then President Trump, when he imposed the trade sanctions, the downfall is not the right word. The growth started to stall a little bit. Let me actually put it in that way. The downfall would be a little kind of a negative outlook, probably. But definitely there is an issue that we are finding with Huawei. So the issues are like this. There is a downward spiral with Huawei. Back in January 2019, there was the first case that was lodged against Huawei because Huawei is supposedly very well connected with the Chinese government. So if you think about if it's very well connected with the Chinese government, then because it's the largest telecom provider or the largest telecom equipment provider, it actually can allegedly can do espionage, can actually do cybersecurity threats for the host governments and so on and so forth, which is why again, I don't know whether these allegations are right or wrong, but that's not the topic of actually today's discussion. The topic is that because of that, Huawei started to have this downward spiral. And then there are all these new things coming up as well. I don't know if you're aware of it, but there is this Australia, United Kingdom, and United States pact that happened. And you will just see in a bit, Australia, United Kingdom, and United States, they're the three countries that have banned Huawei's 5G rollouts. India is at the sideline. India is another big, large country in terms of huge potential to have a huge telecom equipment growth, because it will grow in the next 10, 15 years, more and more. However, India has not accepted Huawei's 5G rollout either. So that's where I'd like you to see this graph over here, guys. You will find that United States, UK, and Australia, they have banned Huawei's products already in terms of their 5G rollouts. Europe has not yet, and Europe is still having a good, a solid trade relationship that way with China, and Huawei is an integral part of it. However, if you look at India and other countries like that, you will see that they are on the fence. So they have not decided if they're willing to allow Huawei to participate in their 5G rollouts. And that's going to be a major problem for Huawei. Now, why am I talking about it? Because why I started the topic with China and the US and the trade war that's happening because of the bipolar world that's what the current scenario is because you will find in the international business literature that there are actually a substantial amount of international business literature that points out to the fact that there is a country of origin theory. So if you have an issue with the country of origin, in this case, China, so if you have an issue with China, it will impact its main brand. So what's the main brand of China in terms of telecom equipment and smartphone? The main brand is Huawei. So if there is an issue with China, the country of origin theory states that eventually the main brand will get tarnished in terms of its image, and that will suffer. That theory is very much evident here in this case. So I'll talk about the current IB literature, guys. It's called the country of origin theory that leads to animosity, the economic animosity and the political animosity. The economic animosity is something, again, that happens because of the trade war, and the political animosity happens because you just don't absolutely like this bipolar scenario, and there are all other kind of issues that comes in that direction when it happens. So guys, because of the economic and political animosity, Huawei is the brand that is suffering the most. And I will give you another reason to it. And why am I talking about it, or why am I saying that Huawei, being the main brand, is getting tarnished? Is because Xiaomi is another Chinese smartphone. And frankly, if you go to the subcontinent today, the subcontinent main is India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, and so on. If you go there today, you will find that Xiaomi has captured the market. But Xiaomi is also a Chinese product. So what's happening? What's happening is that Xiaomi does not reflect Chinese state as such, as Huawei does. Unfortunately, Huawei is the one, when we consider Huawei, we consider that the Chinese state influence in that private enterprise. But in case of Xiaomi, we actually don't do that. It's that brand image of Huawei which is causing the problem. In Europe right now, Xiaomi is the leading smartphone vendor. It's getting 24% market share again in Europe, much at the expense of Huawei's market share. Multiple rounds of US sanctions cut Huawei from crucial computing chips in terms of semiconductors and so on, which is where the big problems lies for Huawei. And essentially, there is, as I've quoted over here, European carriers and retailers have simply swapped Huawei with or in Xiaomi. So Xiaomi's growth is definitely a big challenge for Huawei, not only in Europe, but also if you find here, of course, in Europe, Xiaomi's growth is there. Also look at India. India is where 600 million people, registered the number, 600 million people, 600 million people in terms of are the ones actually who use smartphones in India. 600 million people. It's definitely a developing country. It's one can call it a poor country as well, but people are getting connected with one another through smartphones, and there 26% of the 600 million smartphones that are available in India today, 26% of them are from Xiaomi, and Huawei is nowhere in the picture. So that's another big challenge for Huawei that's going in. So my recommendations, the main, basically to the main brand of Chinese enterprise, Huawei, would be that their finance is still strong. They are a market leader, definitely in the telecom equipment provider. They maintain, they're very well supplied up to this point. They have the money, they have smartphones. Semiconductors are unavailable to them, but they are finding other ways to find it, to get it actually. So that's there to some extent. They have hugely invested in the research and development. I haven't shown you a graph over here, but they have invested more than 2.5 times more than Apple in terms of the research and development back in 2020 and this year 2021. So research and development would be the key for them to develop new smartphones and so on and so forth. They are going into the electric vehicle market as well. Electric vehicle, as you know, by 2025, out of 5 Chinese cars that will hit the market or that will hit the road in, so again in China, 3 of them are going to be battery administered. So electric vehicles are going to be very important, and Huawei is going very much in that direction. They are developing electric vehicles. In fact, if you go to the Shanghai main district right now, the Shanghai downtown, and there is a big Huawei shop over there. However, previously Huawei had all the smartphones and so on. If you go today, they have electric vehicles there. So they're already shifting from the smartphones and telecom equipment providing business to electric vehicles to capture that market, which is still very nascent, and they can capture it. Recommendations, of course, from my part would be diversification. That would be very important, diversification, as I was mentioning, electric vehicles. Then that might offset the profit declines to some extent. They have developed, because of the US sanctions, they cannot use the operating systems as such, the main operating systems that are available right now globally. They cannot use Google, they cannot use Microsoft and so on. So they have developed an operating system for their smartphone, which is called Harmony, and they are using it for all their smartphones. So again, the research and development is playing a very something like a pivotal role in terms of developing all this, and they're going into the electric vehicles market as well. So I have to mention, these are the few things. With the North American Huawei, which is there in Canada, because US, of course, you know that it has banned Huawei. So Canadian Huawei headquarter, I have had, I've presented my paper there, and we have had these recommendations and so on and so forth mentioned over there. So they are going in that direction. That should help, but you have to take that into the light of the fact that this is the main brand, and the brand should be should actually detach itself from the Chinese state. Unfortunately, when we talk about the Chinese state and maybe the cybersecurity threats that might be coming out of China and so on and so forth, there is a connection of that with Huawei. Huawei as a brand needs to take or detach itself from that. If it can do so, it has the money, it has the finance power, it has the muscle power to actually come out and succeed and grow exorbitantly like it did before. On that note, guys, if you have any questions, I'll entertain those, but I'll end it here.